want to have any more information on some of these topics. That said, let me go ahead and introduce here Alderman Brian Hopkins, who is going to start off our meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And thank you to our panel. As Steve said, we have assembled basically the entirety of the ranking leadership of the Chicago Police Department in our community. They're here tonight to talk about what they're doing in response to what they see happening in our neighborhood that we're all aware of. We have the commander of the vehicular hijacking task force, Commander Winstrom. We have Lieutenant Keane from the vehicular hijacking task force, also Sergeant Swinkle from the same task force. From the 12th district, we have Commander Shemash. She brings with her Sergeant Considine and Captain Gilmer. And then from the 14th district, we have Sergeant Edens. So basically, these are the men and women who are making the tactical and strategic decisions about how best to respond to the increase in carjacking and armed robbery that's happening in our neighborhood. And they're here tonight to do basically two things. Number one, we want to assure you, the residents of the neighborhoods that are affected by this, that the police department is fully aware of the stakes right now. They're fully aware of what's going on. Not a day goes by that my office doesn't get a call or an email from someone who is clearly distressed about the developments that they're seeing in their neighborhood, and they're frightened, and justifiably so. There's a certain amount of activity happening right now in the community that is really unprecedented in a lot of ways, and it has everyone on edge and unnerved. And people want to know that the Chicago Police Department is responding to it. I'm here to tell you that they are. They're here to tell you exactly how they're doing it. So to the extent that that can provide you with some measure of assurance that there is a response to what's happening in our neighborhoods right now, I hope you'll come away from this meeting tonight feeling that the men and women who have taken an oath to serve and protect our neighborhoods are absolutely doing their very best to do just that. Now, as we talk about some of the things that they're doing, some of the adjustments that they're making, some of the new techniques that law enforcement is using to try and arrest offenders, bear in mind that there's a certain amount of detail that they're really not able to get into, especially in the use of strategic deployment of forces. I'll give you a classic example of it right now. My office, working in conjunction with both the 12th and the 14th district, have determined some areas that need extra police resources. So we can talk about how we make those decisions. What we can't do is tell you the exact corner and the exact time that they're going to be deployed there. Obviously, that defeats the purpose. So I hope you'll cut them a little bit of slack. They're not trying to be evasive when they can't fully disclose some of the tactical decisions that they make and some of the directive that they give to the ranking police officers and to the men and women on patrol during roll calls before they go out. But we can talk in more general terms, and the carjacking task force will certainly do that, about some of the strategic decisions that are being made in response to the increase in armed robbery and armed carjackings that we're seeing in the neighborhood. The second thing we want to accomplish with this meeting tonight is to have the police department know that the community has their back as well. It's important for us as citizens to express our gratitude and to express our desire that the police are able to do their job effectively and to arrest offenders. We all know what's been happening in society in the last couple of years. And you know that recruitment for the job of police officer has never been more difficult than it is now. And part of that is because the police do not always feel appreciated. So when we have a meeting like this and hundreds of people show up, average citizens, civilians from all walks of life, they're here to say to the police officers, we support you, we want you to do your job, we need you to do your job, because if you don't, we see the kind of increase in criminal activity that threatens us right now. So if we can accomplish those two objectives tonight, I'll consider this to be a productive meeting. So let's get into it with a beginning. We'll have Sergeant Edens can talk about the recent mass shooting that took place on Milwaukee, and he can give us a status update on where that case is at. Sergeant Edens.
Thank you, Alderman. Earlier today, I did have a meeting with the owners of the Point on the 1500 block of Milwaukee, where the incident took place in front of, and a lot of the victims were leaving at that time, and also Alderman Laspada as well today. one of the things we've been working on since June on the 1500, well, the 12 to 1500 blocks of Milwaukee was stripping parking and having tow trucks come tow the cars on the area, specifically the 1500 block, because of all the problems that have been going on there. Most people equate it to Bourbon Street lately. The requests are always in for the tow trucks. We didn't have tow trucks on Saturday night. All of the tow trucks were deployed to the Chicago Marathon that was earlier this morning to clear the ways for the strip. So that was one of the requests we had put in. We weren't aware until later that night that we weren't getting any tow trucks. With that said, none of the cars that usually are parked in front of there would have been there. There was an altercation that took place inside the point. A little bit of shoving kind of went on. They decided things were getting unruly. They decided to close early and had people start exiting. One of the patrons of the bar got into an altercation on the street. He fired shots at one of the individuals off the sidewalk on the east side of the street. That is the actual offender that actually has passed, was the one that actually started firing shots. One of the shooters involved, since there were several shooters, has been picked up and charged. He was charged later that night. He was charged with UW by a felon, aggravated battery in 2 counts, reckless discharge, attempt murder, and another UW possessed firearm carry. All those charges has been approved. So we're working with the Alderman's office in the First Ward, and as well as the Wicker Park Chamber of Commerce, as far as seeing what other aspects we can do to try to tighten up a lot of the problems going on in 1500 of Milwaukee, specifically the point. But we're aware of the situations going on there. We immediately brought them in, as well as the Alderman's office, to kind of have a discussion together to see what we can do to accomplish several things. And I think we made at least some decent headway on it, and we're trying to get more of the businesses involved as far as keeping an eye and ears and trying to shut down early if there is going to be unruly customers or guests there at the area. So.
Thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate that. And, we're going to be fast moving here tonight on this panel because we're going to try to get a lot in before 6 o'clock. Again, tonight, this is the Second Ward West Town Safety Webinar. We're going to be talking about carjackings, and we're going to be talking with the Vehicular Hijacking Task Force as well. I do want to keep it in West Town for a second. So we just heard from the 14th District. I'd like to introduce Commander Shemash from the 12th District and her team. Commander, can you tell us a little bit about what the 12th District has been doing about patrolling across West?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I would like to actually use this opportunity to introduce Beth Giltmier, who is now the acting commander of the 12th District. I am currently the acting Area 3 Deputy Chief. So we've stepped up a little bit here in rank, and she has been the captain in the 12th District the entire time with me. So we've worked really well together for the last couple of years, and now happy to be passing the 12th District on to her. She's a great asset to the district and the community. She's been there for a long time and knows it very well. So you're definitely being left in good hands. A little bit, and then we'll get into the task force, but 12 has been working really well with our area detectives, and some of them are on the line as well. Every time we get one of these carjackings, with immediate notification to the neighboring districts, neighboring SDSC rooms, which are the camera rooms, so that we can track these cars electronically once they're taken. And a lot of community outreach that our CAPS office excuse me, has been doing to try and get some preventative measures out there. And again, we don't want to talk about blaming anybody for this, but these are crimes of opportunity, and we do try to really get the word out to our communities to try and prevent it, right? Just awareness of surroundings and parking and lighting, walking the vehicles alone, loading, unloading, that kind of thing. Especially we are seeing a lot of the vehicles taken that are part of deliveries, be it food deliveries or rideshare. So getting a lot of those businesses on board with us as well as to how to safely load, unload passengers and food items, etc. So that is a constant battle because people just want the convenience of jumping out of their cars and while it's running. So we're working with our CAPS office a lot to get everybody on board with that. Numbers specific, I saw a lot of questions specifically to numbers and some statistics, and I'm going to actually turn that over to Beth Giltmier to go ahead and talk a little bit about what the numbers actually look like in 12 and around the district. So thank you.
Thank you. And I should update the webinar to say Commander Giltmier, congratulations, and thank you for taking up the helm at the 12th District.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Can you hear me, sir?
We can hear you.
Okay, excellent. As far as the numbers go, within this ward, it's going quite well. And I think part of that is, like the commander said, people doing due diligence, being careful, looking around. And in some cases, the ride share and the delivery people are doing better. When we ride up on them, their cars are off. It's helping out a lot. So with that being said, within the last 30 days, we've seen, fortunately enough, 1 armed robbery within this ward in the 12th district and 1 vehicular hijacking so far. Not that that's great, but it's better. The numbers for the district are within the last 28 days, we've had 4 vehicular hijackings within our district, and 1 of those are within the ward. So outside of that, it's been we've been doing quite well. We've been on the downward spin. So if you go back to 28 days is how we measure things, we were at 24 vehicular hijackings for the whole district. So that's saying something, that there was only 1 in this area. That's again, that's a, you know, kudos to the people around and people visiting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then let me transition a little bit. Deputy Chief Shemash had mentioned a few things like tracking vehicles, delivery driver vehicles. I want to bring in Lieutenant Keane from the Vehicular Hijacking Task Force, and we also have Sergeant Swinkle on the line as well. Can I ask you a little bit, because the Second Ward office here at the Second Ward, we get a lot of calls that have to do with, you know, is Westtown being targeted? You know, one of the things we're trying to do tonight is kind of showcase what work is being done. Relating to the task force, is there any kind of an update that you have on how effective the task force has been in locating some of the cars, or even finding if there's repeat robbery crews that are doing these types of incidents? And that's for Lieutenant Keane. We can start with you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't have specific numbers as far as everything that the team can be given credit for, but on a quick look at the chart provided by the team, I would say 85% of the vehicles taken between September 13th and the 8th of October have been successfully recovered. Typically, they're being recovered on the west side. The 11th district is really popular. The 10th district, there are similarities in where the vehicles are recovered. That information does help the team to put together suspect information, gang information, and frequent flyers, if I may say it that way, of people that we know commit these crimes and subsequently get released or are rearrested at another time. That information is really helpful. There's a lot of good video out there, and I know some of you might have seen the video virally and on the news from the incidents in the 17th district. And that just reiterates the fact that how brazen all the criminals are. And another thing that would bring to light, I'm sure everyone that did see those videos, is safety is paramount. We could talk about what we're doing and recovering these vehicles and everything, but when you hear when you see the actions of the individuals, and when you hear their threats and you see that they are armed like that, the most important thing is to remember, I mean, it's hard to do. I've never been the victim in a case like that, but you have to comply. You have to believe that they're serious and what their threats are, and comply. And then we will work to recover your vehicle and hopefully to make an arrest and get to where we need to be as far as the police end of everything. I can tell you, I looked over, I know there was a little bit of mention of numbers in general. What I did for kind of a comparison is I looked for the last 28 days in the whole of Area 5, and the whole of Area 5 being the 14th district, 16, 17, and 25. And there were, in the last 28 days, there were 30, there were a total of 30 carjackings. And unfortunately, 19 of them were in the 14th district. So that kind of gives you a comparison. Area 3, I know 12 falls into Area 3 because it's a north side district. The districts are somewhat similar. For instance, for the whole, I ran for the whole 28 days, and it looks like they had 50 in 28 days. So comparison wise between the districts that comprise those two areas, the Area 5, which includes the 14th district, has had less incidents, but there's a very similar aspect of crime going on in both. And for those that don't know, I know the ward boundaries are different than the district boundaries, but the area of most concern would be, it's all connected by Milwaukee Avenue and the border between 12, 19, and 14th district. So Milwaukee Avenue transverses the whole city, as well as 94, the expressway. And I'm sure between 12 and 14 and all the analysis that is done by the great people in the SDSC rooms and everybody that looks from all these districts on trying to come up with an answer of why it's happening, where it's happening. I would think a commonality is most definitely Milwaukee Avenue and the expressway. And I think it all comes down to the fact that it's a way for transient crime to come into the area and do what they have to do and then get back to wherever it is that they're going, if that makes any sense.
Lieutenant, can you talk a little bit about the operational focus and some of the tactics that the task force employs that make it a more effective tool than just having, district patrol try to respond to carjacking?
Yes, sir. And I could have, if I miss anything, I could have Sergeant Swinkle rein in on it. But what we've been doing is we have been recently given the opportunity to have an extra 8 to 10 members that were part of a citywide team, and now they've recently been assigned to our carjacking task force. And what these, the majority of them are policemen. There's also a sergeant that came with them, and what they do is they check in every day with our detectives, and they take the most recent crime, whether they're there or they come in just after the crime, and they look at what cars were taken and all the details of the crime. Okay. And they go out to the scenes. They are responsible for the most part, for the video recovery and being in communication with OEMC and all the plate readers and trying to locate the vehicle. A good example of that was that we had 2, if not 3 incidents yesterday. They happened to be in the 17th district. The team came in. They were advised of the incidents. They were looking into them. They got notified from OEMC that where the plates were hitting somewhere in the 11th district. And of the 3 incidents that happened within, say, 10 hours of all the incidents, they had recovered all the vehicles. So they do that, as well as then working the entire case with the detectives. So instead of just having one detective assigned to the case, we have one detective, and the support units, like I said, there's 8 to 10 patrolmen who are in contact with the victims. They are canvassing for all the video, the ring video, any witnesses that might have picked it up, and then looking at the city systems in terms of what other evidence can we put forward short of just the witnesses and the victims' accounts of what happened.
And since a major part of your focus obviously is to bring repeat offenders into custody, can you talk a little bit about how you try to respond to the limitations that you have to operate under, given that you cannot engage in vehicle pursuits, and carjacking is a crime that almost always by definition involves a vehicle, so that you can't pursue them. What are the tactics that you try to use to identify and arrest offenders?
So the most important thing, like I said, would be the safety as well, the citizen safety as well as the police officer safety. And that's why those things are put in place. But probably the most useful tool now is the LPRs, the license plate readers that are tied into our pod camera system. So when I just mentioned the fact that those 3 vehicles that were taken, the reason that they were able to obtain those vehicles is because of the notification from the hijacking task force members at OEMC. They get the word out, tell us where the cars are, and then we go try to locate them. Without getting into too much information, I can tell you it's that effective that when they went to go recover one vehicle that they were told was in a location, a second vehicle that had been involved with the crimes pulled up and in turn saw that they were recovering one of the vehicles and then took off. So yeah, those limitations are there, and we're only going to be able to do what we can, with what we're, the rules that were underneath. But having said that, recovering the vehicle is important. And the most important part after recovering the vehicle is going to be if we go back and there's no victim, or we have a victim, but the victim can't provide identification because of a mask or because they were scared or because it was dark outside. Probably the next most important thing is going to be, without any witnesses, is going to be any evidence that we could retrieve from that vehicle. So if we don't have a suspect and they find a pop bottle or they find a cigarette butt or they find something that was not in the car when that vehicle was taken from them, now that evidence can be processed and in turn come back and give us a suspect. And then from there, no, it's not going to be immediate, but when that information comes back, we can take that information and see if that gives us a suspect based on DNA or fingerprint evidence or what have you. And then we can go back to the victim and maybe it triggers something. Maybe at that point we can show them a photo and maybe something comes to light where we can make an arrest based on that information.
We just today received reports of an arrest in a multi-state professional vehicle theft ring operating between Chicago and Texas that involved rental vehicles being stolen and traded and sold in different jurisdictions. But the recovery rate for hijacked vehicles suggests that these are not attempts to steal and sell vehicles. Does your experience bear that out? And what happens when you uncover vehicles that seem to be stolen to be resold, or does that just not happen under the jurisdiction of your task force?
With what's going on now, though, that would be more of a part of a long-term investigation. There is, in our Central Investigations Division, there is a group called CMATI who kind of dives a little bit deeper into that. There'll be more contact with the suburbs and the other states, if you will. A lot of that seems to be a part of where they actually may change VIN numbers. They play with that, and sometimes those vehicles don't actually remain here. They're shipped to other states. That doesn't appear what's going on in the day-to-day things. It appears that the vehicles, because of where they're frequently located, and because a common theme that we find between a lot of the incidents is they'll list a tail car. And a tail car is when the commanders describe an area that's being hit hard, when we say, not only are you supposed to be looking for someone that's standing around that something doesn't fit, but you're looking for a car that's maybe running with its lights off in the corner. So the criminals will actually take a vehicle and then take that to their next location where they want to commit another crime. So that tail car, when we examine all the incidents between our area and the other areas, we work very well with all the other areas because the criminals don't know any boundaries. So they're doing them in one district and another district in another area. So there's really no boundaries when it comes to that. But these tail cars and the cars they're using are frequently a car taken in a prior crime, and they just move on and move on. So if a group is, whether they're doing shootings or more robberies or more carjackings, if they're able to have a collection of 4 or 5 vehicles, well, if they get chased, if they get noticed in one vehicle, or if one vehicle gets recovered, they can move on to the next vehicle. So they have more options. They might do them all at once, get themselves a whole bunch of different cars that they can use, and then move on from there. If one gets taken, they always have a second one to go back to.
So most of the armed robberies that occur in this particular community involve offenders coming up in a vehicle, jumping out of the vehicle when they see someone that they want to target. Would you state that most of the vehicles that are being used in these armed robberies are likely vehicles that were obtained through a carjacking incidents?
It seems, I don't have numbers to back that up, but it definitely seems that way. If they are vehicles that are not currently stolen or haven't been taken in another carjacking, they're typically going to have a different license plate on them, a fictitious license plate or a license plate from a different vehicle, because most of the parties that are committing the crimes know that if they leave that out there, that's going to tie them to it some way, and then they're going to have to answer for it.
Let me include here Sergeant Considine from the 12th District. I know, Sergeant, that you work on the robbery crew as well. Would you say that some of the things that you're seeing as well relate to vehicular hijacked vehicles?
Yeah, I think Lieutenant Keane hit all the main points. We're seeing exactly the same kind of crimes that Area 5 is seeing. We also have a group of 4 detectives assigned to the vehicle hijacking task force here in Area 3. That covers all of our districts here, and we cover 6 districts, but specifically in the 12th district, we not only have those detectives and the officers from the citywide team that the lieutenant had mentioned. In the 12th district, we have a separate robbery mission team, which consists of 8 officers. They work very closely with my detectives. They're very good at what they do. They are excellent with video. They work in conjunction with the SDSC room, along with our Area Technology Center, which we call the ATC. They've been very successful in identifying offenders, repeat offenders. They've been worked very closely with Area 3 here. We cover many, many vehicles. Obviously, the ultimate goal is not only, as the lieutenant said, not only recovering those vehicles, but hopefully placing someone in the custody if there is an ID that was made. So we do a lot of the same things that Area 5 does. It seems to be successful in recovering vehicles. We are limited, as the lieutenant said, as to charging offenders. We do need identifications from victims or some kind of physical evidence, whether that be a DNA, fingerprint, video. But we follow up on all those things, and we have many different officers working in conjunction to try to bring all these things to a head.
Thank you. And I also want to bring in Sergeant Swinkle, who's on the call as well. Now, here at the Second Ward office, you know, we get calls all the time from people in the neighborhoods, but at the same time, you know, we get calls from some of the victims and the witnesses who literally have a story to tell and want us to help bring evidence to the police. Today, we had someone reach out to our office that I know our staff is going to reach back to about a recent street robbery as well. But the callers that call in here, they're frustrated. They want to see police out there. They want to see arrests made. So we definitely hear them loud and clear. And, you know, that's one of the things that we do this type of webinar for, just to share that with you directly. But Sergeant Swinkle, would you say that there's any kind of specific cars that are being gone after? Is there a rhyme or reason to this that residents can think about, or even some basic advice on what types of tips they should be thinking about how to avoid some of these situations if possible?
Well, it seems to me that there are not necessarily specific cars. One of the things that was mentioned earlier that isn't really our unit, but where cars are taken out of state, and that tends to be more the high end vehicles. But it appears that most of what we see, much like what Lieutenant Keane mentioned yesterday in the 14th district, the 17th district, but it just happened to be somebody driving, parking their driveway, and a car drove by, circled back around, and it's basically just an opportunity. And so they're not necessarily targeting a specific car, a specific, male or female. They're just looking for somebody that's maybe not 100% alert, maybe sitting in their car, getting groceries out of the trunk, looking at their phone before they get out of the car. And it's really just more a crime of opportunity is what we're seeing.
Okay, thank you. And then Sergeant Edens, I wanted to come back to you as well. You were talking at the meeting at Churchill Park just about some of the tips for people to keep in mind. But also you had mentioned that there was some way to maybe bolster the chance to find the car if it was stolen with GPS locators. Did you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so what we've noticed with a lot of the vehicles that were stolen in vehicle hijackings, they're usually pulling out the rearview mirror because that's where they assume the GPS is located in the vehicle. But one of the things that was like an aftermarket option for a lot of people, especially if you have Apple products, is air tags. They're $30. They're about the size of a quarter. You can put them on a keychain, wallet, stuff like that. But hiding those in your vehicle, how that works is it has a tracker you set up through Find My iPhone, and then you can log in and register it. So when the way they locate it, especially if it's not nearby, is it pings off of anyone that has Find My iPhone or Bluetooth accessible. So pretty much millions of people, as it's going by, it can track it and download it. It's all anonymous, so it's not going to tell you, oh, it was Jerry's phone or something like that, or somebody else's. It just gives you a map location. When you log into your iCloud, it'll show you where it's at, notify you of the locations of those. So as far as finding your vehicle and recovering it, that's a aftermarket option that's not too expensive. And most people do have Apple products. I don't know if Samsung or Galaxy has anything that's similar available to them, but it's at least a separate option as far as locating your vehicle. Like I say, most people have OnStar with newer vehicles that are being stolen. That's why they're ripping out the rearview mirrors as far as trying to bypass some of those GPSs and notifications on that. And then again, as was stated before, just regular safety tips of, making aware of your surroundings and stuff like that. Most of these are crimes of opportunity. They're driving around, they're seeing who's pulling up, who's around. It's not specifically one vehicle what they're looking for. They're not just driving around looking for Audis or looking for Chevys or anything like that. They're looking to who's available, who's close by, and pretty much a getaway. They'll find something off of one of the side streets, and then they can take Damon or Milwaukee and get away close, whether it's the expressway. A lot of them seem to be near that Milwaukee North and Damon area between, I'd say, Armitage to Division, even Levitt to Wood, at least in the 14th district, whereas primarily where most of our carjackings are taking place. And we are seeing a lot of them are driving south all the way down Damon or down Western to the 11th or 10th districts from there, if they don't hop on the expressway and take 290, because most of the license plate readers that we're seeing on pod cameras are coming off of the 11th district off of 290 as well as Central Park too. So, but yeah, so those are some of the things that we're looking for as far as, trying to locate your vehicle and kind of help find them.
This might be a good time to remind people of the importance of compliance if you find yourself in the unfortunate situation that you have been selected as a victim. The importance of not resisting, because that puts your personal safety at risk. We've seen, and just recently, one of the armed robbery sprees that happened. There's some particularly violent offenders out there, and if you even hesitate, they're going to pistol whip you or strike you or injure you in some way. It's just not worth it. Let your possessions go and keep your health and your life.
Yeah, we've seen several people that we know people are frustrated and they're tired of dealing with this issue, but they have become violent. As you said, people have been pistol whipped, been shot at. Some people tried driving off. One or two have gotten away, but it's just going to get worse, especially if more people try to fight back and stuff like that. It is property. I said it before at the community meeting as well. You can replace property. You can get your car back. You can get your wallet back, your phone, things like that. Those things can be replaced. A human life cannot. So yeah, don't be putting at risk where that you might get shot at or someone might, kill you just over a vehicle that is insured and things that you can get back. The task force can work with, trying to identify who the offenders are through various items that are left in the vehicle and stuff like that through processing. Those things can be replaced. Your life cannot.
Yeah, it's an important message. Thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you, Sergeant. And just a reminder, tonight's meeting is being recorded. We're going to post it after the fact on aldermanhopkins.com for you or your neighbors that want to review it or watch it again. Let me move to Deputy Chief Shemash and Captain Giltmier of the 12th District. One thing is that we got a lot of requests for comment on how neighbors can help the police, but specifically, how can they be part of the solution? A series of emails also mentioned, should residents wear and use whistles if they see things? Is there any suggestion that you have for how the community can try to play more of a role in assisting police with any of these operations?
I'll chime in on this one. So the whistles, I guess that's a personal preference. With everything going on right now, I don't know that that's the best solution if people are going to pay attention to it necessarily. A lot of times people are in their own worlds and they will just ignore, if it's not happening to them, they won't necessarily pay attention. I can't say that it won't help if it makes somebody feel better or more secure. Sure, go ahead. I can't say that it'll hurt. I just don't know that that's something that'll necessarily help or get people's attention. One of the things is when these crimes are occurring, they're occurring when people tend to be not near others, that they're not near witnesses. Making an audible sound of any kind may not necessarily garner anybody's particular attention. It may in fact anger the people that are committing the crime. So it's really a personal preference on that answer. In terms of what the community can really do to help us, the sharing of the videos with our detectives, again, that's huge in terms of trying to identify people. We have the Ring doorbell program in the 12th district. I don't believe 14 has it yet, but we have that program where people can tie their Ring cameras right into our district and our detectives. And then there's ways to share other video where we can come out and look at it. The easiest way is for people to email directly the file of videos they may have from whatever Nest cameras or other types of surveillance videos they have. If the file is too large, we'll gladly come out with a zip drive and we'll download it, because a lot of times these videos are too large to actually email. But the sharing of these videos is huge because that's what gets us to actually identifying this. And then again, being vigilant and keeping an eye on what's going on. Again, as I think several of us have said now, it's such a crime of opportunity that if you're on your porch or you're outside raking leaves, just eye contact with people walking down the block is a huge deterrent to somebody that may be walking through or driving up and down the block looking for that opportunity. So it's, I'd say neighbors being outside is a huge deterrent, just as a police car driving down the street. Just that eye contact so these bad guys know, hey, everybody's watching. I just drove down that block and there's 6 families outside and they all looked at me when I drove down that block. So the likelihood is they're going to turn the corner and find somewhere else to go and not commit the crime there. So it is really about being vigilant and aware of your surroundings. And the sharing of these videos for us is huge. I'll let Beth Giltmier jump in if she has some additionals, but those are my big asks of the community to help us.
Sure, and piggyback on what the deputy said, sorry about that. To piggyback off what the deputy said, the simple thing to do is if you see somebody on the street and you think they're looking around or they're acting suspicious or you just don't know, call it in 911, and you can do it anonymously. Suspicious person, that's really a way to get us to come to the block or to the area. It's a simple thing. We've been doing it for years, but we kind of need to go back to that. Anonymous is great. And if you see them doing something, if you're in a safe position, please notice what they're wearing. An odd hat, a different color shoes, and don't be afraid to give a physical description to the call taker, because we're not looking to, how to put this, we're not looking to pinhole anybody, put anybody in a corner. We just want to get the specific suspect. And that way, with that being said, our camera room, they can start looking for that person or people right away and direct our guys and gals to the right person. And that makes us do a more surgical strike. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you very much. And yeah, that was, we had a lot of people that were just basically asking, how can they help? What should they be doing? So I appreciate you taking some time on that. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes here, but one big thing, and I want to go to Lieutenant Keane again. One big thing is that a lot of people were talking about prosecutions. Is there, can you kind of summarize what are some of the challenges to moving forward with some of these prosecutions from your point of view?
So when we talked about that before, it was kind of general in terms of misdemeanor and felony. And the most important part of the charging, obviously, is the identification, but it's all going to be based on the elements of the crime. So for each crime, for a crime of just for vehicular hijacking, the ILCS statute reads that, I could actually read it to you, knowingly takes a motor vehicle from the person or in the immediate presence of another by use of force or threatening imminent use of force. And it holds a class 1 felony. So when the victim describes what happens to him, the details in the end, and the detectives are going to pull out the details. The responding officer is going to try to get as much detail as possible. We understand that the victim is going to be scared. Hopefully the victim is not hurt. But sometimes as time goes by, they're going to remember different points, what they said to you. Did they have their hand in their pocket? There's aggravating factors as you start with the basic vehicular hijacking. So if they most definitely had a weapon, it turns into aggravated vehicular hijacking. But there's also other elements of the crime, as if the victim was of a certain age, whether there was a child under the age of 16 in the back seat. So when the details, if the victims get frustrated or they just need some time to breathe, a lot of the charging is going to be based on the elements of the crime, and that hopefully will come out at some point in the investigation, but that's why they're important. Because the charging that the state's attorney will allow us is all going to be based on how the statutes are written. So I talked about the aggravating factors of vehicular hijacking, and in robbery in itself, it starts the same way. It starts at a basic robbery, and then factors including age of the victim, injuries. If there happen to be injuries, those are aggravating factors. Ages of everyone, I went over that a little bit, and then it goes on down from there. We talked about if someone is just caught in the car. So say someone really doesn't have a whole lot of information. They were in their alley, they were in their garage, and they were approached, and the subject was, it was so dark they didn't even see him. They don't have a really good description. We take whatever we can get, and then we look for the video evidence, and we try to put all that together. If maybe a witness comes forward and says, I saw that person that you're describing, and they had a gun, I saw, or they had a hammer in their hand or something. So then we take all those bits and pieces of information, and that can make the difference in charging. The difficulties that we face for sure are, it does come back to the identification. But without that identification, the important thing to remember is that the evidence that we can get later on that we can tie back, even if we don't have a description. We just had a hooded individual. We don't even have, we may not have a race, we may not have an age, we may not have any specifics, but we can take that DNA evidence or whatever we get back, and then we can provide pictures, and maybe something comes out in the investigation where we can make headway on who that individual is.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. As we wrap everything up here, I want to go back to Sergeant Mike Edens in the 14th District. We were talking a lot about Westtown crimes, and there's been such an uptick in Wicker Park. Do you have any final comments that you want to leave with people about the work being done in the 14th District?
So I know, as established our area of concern with the Bucktown, Wicker Park area, the commander has done seatbelt missions. It's more of a deterrent. We're doing one on third watch and one on the midnight shift between various hours. Again, like as the Alderman said, I don't want to give specific dates and times when they're occurring, but we're doing those on a regular basis. We were adding an extra kind of fixed roving patrol around North and Wood at the Alderman's request to kind of like keep a focus over there, because a lot of the carjackings, the vehicles are coming down Wood from Armitage through North Avenue down towards Milwaukee Avenue as well. So we're kind of like working on that over the weekends. We are adjusting hours of the TAC teams in the mornings too, to kind of offset some of the early morning carjackings that we're seeing. We're now starting to see that pattern where a lot of them are happening 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, where they used to happen between, well, some in broad daylight, but even in the later hours around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. So we've made adjustments to those to kind of focus on when these carjackings are actually occurring at various times of the day as well.
Thank you, Sergeant. And then Sergeant Considine, do you have anything to share about things that people should be worried about with some of the street robberies? Now, I know the 12th district, the area that we're talking about here for West Town, it's really the very top of the 12th district. There's different activity in different parts of your district, so I know it's a lot of area to cover, but regarding the top of the 12th district, do you have any final advice just for some of the residents regarding some of the street robberies, burglaries that you've been involved in helping to investigate?
Yeah, just like everyone else said, remain vigilant, be aware of your surroundings, and to be honest, we could be as prepared as we want to be, but unfortunately, these things are going to happen no matter how prepared you are. With that being said, any pieces of information you can give the responding officer, or when the detective calls for the follow-up, any bit of information that one believes may not be important may really tip the scales into our favor, whether that be a funky design on a sweatshirt, a unique hat. I know right now these different color shoes are becoming very popular with younger people. All these things, when we go look for video, really stick out. And as Captain Giltmier had said, if anyone could share video with us, it may be video that a detective may have missed when he does his canvas, or a responding officer may have missed. If you have video and no one knocked on your door, please feel free to either call the 12th district. You can call the 12th district detective's office. I can give you that number real quick if you need it. It's 312-746-7066, or call the Area 3 Detective Division and ask for the RBT office. We are more than happy to make sure that detective has that information and goes and retrieves that video. Other than that, we do live in a big city. These things are unfortunately going to happen, but we are doing everything we can in order to arrest people and hold them accountable for what they're doing.
Thank you. And then Deputy Chief Shemash, do you have any final comments for the audience tonight?
So, just really thanks for participating. It does mean a lot to us to actually see people this engaged, and hopefully, I know this wasn't really an open comment forum, but hopefully supportive of us. Every time we can solve one of these cases or arrest one of these criminals, whether it be a robber or burglar, it's a win for us. And we really do, we all live in the city too. So we're all part of this together, and we really can't do it without you guys. So thanks for being involved. Thanks for being supportive of us. And it may not clear up overnight, but we're doing it one step at a time. And I hope we're moving in the right direction. So just be patient with us and be supportive of us, and we will be as supportive as well with everybody there, whether it's a victim or a witness. And we're all here. We're a phone call away. So please reach out to our office, 1214, the area. We're really all here to help you. And we do want everybody to feel safe in their communities, as we want to be safe in ours. And it's all one community. So hang in there with us, please.
Thank you. And then with the last few minutes here, Alderman Hopkins, I don't know if you want to speak to it, but obviously, how many people reach out to the office here about their anxiety and frustration. do you want to speak to, why it was important to do tonight's meeting?
Yeah, I do. I actually think Deputy Chief Shemash just kind of nailed it right there. She lives here too, right? We're all in this together. We're all residents of this city that I presume we all love, or otherwise, why would we be here? Recently I've seen a comment repeated over and over again in some of the neighborhood Facebook pages and message boards, et cetera. It's something to the effect that, crime was worse in the early 90s than it is today. I was here in the early 90s. I lived in McKinley Park. My girlfriend lived in Bucktown. I was around. This seems different to me, but I wonder about the motivation for the people making that comment, because if what they're trying to say is we as a city have been through tough times before and come through it, that crime, like anything else, is cyclical, and there's bad periods and good periods and in between periods, and somehow we all get together and get through it all. We may be in a bad period now, but we'll get through it. If that's the point they're trying to make, I would agree with that. If the point they're trying to make is that, we're overreacting, or this is not as much of a crisis as we think it is, I would push back on that, because something has shifted in our society right now. We sense it, we feel it, and I hear it. I hear it in the men and women of law enforcement, in the candid conversations that I have with them. And the Deputy Chief just nailed it. She's experiencing it as a Chicagoan, as well as a uniformed law enforcement first responder. And all I can say is to you, Deputy Chief, and everyone else, the ranking officers on this call, you're doing a difficult and dangerous job. And it may be more difficult and more dangerous than it's been certainly in my lifetime. So you have our gratitude, and you have our thanks and our support as you do that job to protect us and to uphold your oath. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for all you do for us. And we do support you, and we are in this together. And I hope for all our sakes, we will get through it. Thank you.
And thank you for everybody tuning in tonight. This is going to be a recording that's going to be posted on aldermanhopkins.com. From everybody here at the Second Ward office, from Lisa Ryan, from Brian Pellrine, from Ethan Brady, from Rocio Varela. We appreciate all of the calls that you send into our office. Again, I'm Steve with the office here. Thank you so much to Deputy Chief Shemash, to Commander Beth Giltmier, Sergeant Mike Edens from the 14th, Sergeant John Considine from the 12th, Sergeant Swinkle and Lieutenant Keane. Thank you so much for joining us from the Vehicular Task Force. We appreciate everybody being on the call tonight. Feel free to follow up with the Second Ward office if you have any further questions. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Stay safe, everyone.